We're a cat-rich studio.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of studios I've worked before, they're like dog heavy, but this is cat intense. Yes.
We have many a cat.
It's true. In Evie's bunk, we have all three of the cats from the development team, which makes it sound like they worked on the game.
They did.
Okay, fair enough.
Did. Well, he would hit the keyboard from time to time.
Amazing.
But yeah, we have a framed photo of Kate's cat Tuco, who in the game plays the part of Margaret Catwood, Evie's cat. And then on the delicious cat food is my cat Delicious. And then the sweet puffy paw on that cat litter box belongs to Carla's cat Wednesday.
It's true. She's a paw model now.
The Tuco picture frame, originally when I made it, Carla, you'd asked for a picture frame model.
Yeah.
And then I had just kind of put that picture of Tuco in there as a placeholder, with the idea that eventually we would put actually something like relevant. Because at that time there was no cats in the game.
Right. I remember.
And then it sort of stayed in there, that picture, for a long time.
Mhm.
And then...
Up to the present.
Till the present, yeah. And then we just kind of kept it after a while. Even though it doesn't quite match the rest of the world, like with regards to art style, I kind of like it.
It's great.
Yeah, it's great. And especially because Tuco unfortunately passed away during the development of Tacoma, but now every time I play this game, I can just go in there and look at this picture, turn it around. Yeah.
I remember when there was like one frame of the animations in admin in the kitchen where all the characters would like show up in the hallway outside between the kitchen and Evie's room or the dining room, and they were all kind of in a group hug pile just like halfway through the floor.
I've run into bugs, but a lot of them had to do with, like, the cat, for instance, in I believe it's, like, the cryo scene at the end, would just show up, like, 100 times the size it's supposed to be, which was really good. I don't know. Usually they're pretty minor fixes, but it's always a surprise.
So the whole main scene in the dining room centers on this making and unveiling of Odin's cake, which he sort of neural networked together into something that he thinks that humans would kind of like to eat for this weird party he's throwing. So that's the cake in the game. It doesn't actually exist. It's just sort of implied sheet cake. But Sarah, for our lunch party, so you were responsible for actually making, like, reproducing the cake in real life, right?
Yes. I would think, I almost feel like I think in my head that it was going to be a lot funnier than it actually was. Like, I was very concerned about the look that I was going to get from a baker when I go in and say, hi, I need like a basic sheet cake in gray and then with very specific red icing. But yeah, she ended up being fantastic. I think we agreed right away that it needed to be some very clear store-bought sheet cake style, nothing super fancy. Because again, you're supposed to be reproducing something that was made in the game.
Yeah.
She's like, got it. This is going to be great. Now, how big do you want it? And I feel like that was the biggest decision, was because the bigger it is, the more of a fun statement it makes as that reproduction cake. Yeah. Luckily, it turned out to be pretty delicious, and I think everyone enjoyed digging in.
Yeah, it was good. I loved it.
So the Obsolescence Day sticky letters are very unique because you can take one letter and put it back anywhere on the wall, whereas most objects with putbacks, you can only put them back in one spot, which is where you found them originally. But yeah, these sticky letters, you can sort of put them anywhere on the wall to spell out whatever you want, which is hilarious. And also, if you put them back a certain number of times, I think it's like 3 times, they lose their stickiness, and you can kind of tell because the sound kind of sounds like you're peeling off the letter from the wall and like it falls off, and there's sort of a sound effect for that. Steve and Carla are really inspired by that scene around the dinner table in Alien. So I was thinking a lot about that scene, and I was like, well, how can we have our own little gathering table like that? And I drew a normal, like, rectangular table at first, and I was like, that's boring. So I put the little, like, weird tilted end on it, and Kate liked it, so she took it and like made it into a real table, which is what you can see in the game now. And I was always kind of excited about that. I was like, I designed a weird table.
So Tacoma is a sci-fi game. Obviously, it takes place on a space station in the future, but also it's very much a story about the lives of these people, these individuals who live here, and kind of about their everyday experience as well as the drama of the crisis that they're living through. And so, the sci-fi stuff that we looked at that was really an influence on us had, at least in part, a strong focus on that kind of relatable experience of the people who are in these fictional worlds.
Yeah, there have been some really solid scenes that we could still draw from, especially in things like Alien. They have the waking up sequence, the dinner table sequence where everyone's talking and coming from their different walks of life and relating to each other. And if we just cut it before John Hurt explodes, then everything is appropriate.
Yeah.
Then we have like Moon, which has long sequences of how a person could actually live their life.
And those were the kinds of things that we wanted to be able to talk about, was what are these people's lives like in a day-to-day way, so that you can kind of picture what it would be like to be here, or what it would be like to be in their situation, and kind of identify with that.
Totally.
So here we are in the lounge, my favorite place in the game.
Yeah, mine too, I
love
think.
it. I can't put my finger on that. Part of it is the pillows.
Yeah. Oh, so those pillows were kind of a nightmare to make, and the less I could see them at the end of the game, the better. Just because when I made those pillows, they weren't like sculpted or anything like that. I was using this program, which is like this. This is basically a sewing program, in that it allows you to make patterns in class simulation. So that you would, make like a pattern, like a traditional sewing pattern, and then it allows you to stitch it together. And if you have something like these pillows, it allows you to use a pressure slider, and it'll sort of inflate the thing you've stitched together. Except the problem is that I kept on just gently inflating them, and they kept like floating into the void, to the point where like every time that I tried to make these pillows, I would just lose them. They would just float away. So by the time that I was done making what should be a fairly simple model, because I was learning new software at the same time, I was like, I'm done with these pillows. And then someone put them on the lounge floor, so I had to see them every time I came in here, not just in the bedrooms. Do you want to talk about the pool table?
Oh, yeah.
Sigh.
Pool table. Yeah, well, no, I mean, I actually had a lot of fun making the pool table, which both of us worked on.
Yeah.
Quite a bit, because it is strange.
It's a fussy little beast.
The main reason it's fussy is this is actually just a physical pool table, and it works pretty similarly to a real pool table. When the pool balls go in the pockets, they actually have to fall on a ramp, and then that ramp rolls the ball and, drops it down into the ball return or to the cue return. A little ramp with a little tube, just like a real pool table. Which, if you're trying to make something deeply interactive and have the players engage or not engage with it, but at least it feels like it should, which is hopefully the bar you're trying to hit, is the player feels like that's legitimate. Like, I'm in a place and the pool table works as I would expect it to.
Yeah.
Oh, the darts.
The darts.
This dartboard had potentially more bugs than anything else in the video game. I was still fixing bugs, you know, the last night before release on this. It's just, there's so many states and so many confusing, unique features about this, with the, you know, being able to put the darts back in the door, and then the door can move, and the door can be open or closed, and it can close on a dart that's stuck in the board.
You know what? We could have just made it so that it wasn't a cabinet, so that the darts were just stored underneath in a little rack or something, and then that would have solved so many problems for you.
Oh, don't say it now. Yeah, yes, we should have.
Glitch text was initially a way for us to make our text more approachable. We wanted to have the appearance of a full page of information, but not make you have to literally read the entire page, you know, and retain everything. So we were like, what's a good way for us to give you basically islands of ideas to grab onto, so that you, don't have to process an entire page.
But also, you know, like Carla was saying, we had this problem conceptually, which is like, if you open, for instance, a web page in an AR desktop in our fiction, why isn't it just the entire thing that you can read? We didn't want to have to put all of that in front of the player, and so being able to say, like, a lot of what our games are about is only having access to little bits and pieces of information, and then you have to fill in the gaps as to what the entire meaning is. And so glitch text for us is hopefully the text version of saying, well, I only have like this sentence and this sentence and this paragraph and this little snippet, but I'm involved in interpreting this as the player by saying, oh, and here's what must have been between them, or what the whole message is, without just, you read all the way through it and there it is.
One thing that stood out was the fact that we wanted this idea that the skybox, the starfield, the rotating sun, and then the sun hitting the interiors, we wanted them all to tie together so that it felt like one contiguous thing, you know, that you felt like when you looked out the window you saw the thing you were in, because I feel like there's a lot of little cues that make people have that feeling, which is when they see that the sun is in the sky at a certain spot, and when they see it through the window, and then they notice that the angle of the shadows in the sun and the interior is the same, that connection would be really difficult to do with a tiny model, because we'd have to do some kind of calculation between the tiny sun that is moving around the tiny model and the real giant sun that is moving around the interior spaces. And one of those things that fell out of it was that station is actually as big as a real space station, and that is a funny thing to do with your time.
So Tacoma's localized just like you would expect a game to be localized, in that it has subtitles. And I think the interesting part of the localization for Tacoma is the in-world aspect, where if you have your settings turned on to have AR overlays, then if you look at something like, for example, a magazine in a bunk, the text will appear translated into your given language as an AR overlay. So using the fictional AR technology as a way to show translations of text in the world.
And also, like, even just like in-world signage and stuff like that, where you just like translate it directly in the world, so people don't have to be like, what does that say? Let's turn on the overlay. It's just there.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you're seeing digital information the way that a character in the fiction might if they were just switching their like augmented reality rigged native language to Russian or Japanese or, you know, what have you. I think that Tacoma does look really cool in other languages, because if you go into the language menu and swap, you just see the whole world. Like if you're in the hub, you see the whole world change language. So I would encourage you to take a minute and try swapping the game into like Japanese and Korean and Russian, and just kind of see the world transform through the character sets that come up, because it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So transfer shafts. These are the thing you either just went in or are about to, which takes you from the hub to a wing, and it's kind of internal studio speak for the process the player is going through, the player character, where they grab onto a little sled inside of this long arm that goes from the hub all the way to the wing, and it takes them down there, drops them off, and it safely conveys them from 0G to gravity or the reverse.
And if you're going along the transfer shaft and thinking, "My, this is taking a long time," it's because we're loading stuff in the background.
Yes, and for that reason, it's actually the only part of the station. The 3 transfer shafts are actually the only parts of the station that are always loaded the whole time that you play. Another detail I really like is the way the boots light up whenever they magnetize, which you also see in the entryway. It was something that it took me a while to realize that was what was going on, but that's the kind of deep thinking about how things work that I really appreciate in the station overall. It's pretty cool.
They're like his little coded communiques.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People have tweeted like screenshots at us and called out these messages that kind of break into the player's AR interface sometimes, that are things like it should be saying AR crew member record recovered, but then it says something like death sentence suddenly.
Which
and
is a
then,
surprise to some people.
goes away again. Odin doesn't know what Amy's motives are. Like, as far as he knows, she's really there to take him back to Venturis and for him to be wiped. And so we wanted him to be trying to communicate with her and say, like, no, don't do this. And so for a while, I think we talked about, like, are we going to do this through, like, audio that cuts in or, like, some new interface thing that you see in different places? And then we had that realization that there are these kind of system messages, like when you're transferring into a wing or when you're recovering an AR scene, that he could subvert those via text that Amy's already seeing and just change what the meaning is, even if it's briefly. So yeah, I don't know how many people really are like conscious of these or how many make the connection, but I think hopefully by the end of the game you have that feeling, that this was Odin all along.
Yeah, and there's a whole progression. You can see his feelings about Amy change as time goes on.
That's true. Yeah, it starts out him seeming kind of scared or panicking, and then I think by the end of the game he's starting to almost give her the benefit of the doubt, or say like, I don't have any choice but to trust you, basically.
It seems like he's starting to have a little bit of hope at the end, I think. But
Yeah.
All right, what do you say, folks? Yay or nay?
Obviously, we're on board.
I'm in.
Me too.
Okay.
All right. Well, we non-essential personnel need to figure out how to do everything we can to set this mission up for success, then get the hell out of your way as quickly as possible. Time is oxygen, people. Break.
I can't believe...
Everybody went along with this.
No, I didn't expect them to either.
Oh my god. Okay. So now we actually have to build this thing.
Yeah, that was the whole point.
Yeah.
Hold on, Amy.
Sure.
Are you okay?
Evie! Hey, Evie. Hey, I know you're all like gung-ho to help us out and everything, but I did the math. If we could get this done in like 48 hours, not 72...
Could the rest of us wait longer to go in?
Exactly.
Listen, ladies, I get it. You're trying to do right by us, but every minute we wait to go in is a minute you don't have to get this thing flying. And knowing what we know about VT, we've got to give you every chance we can to succeed.
So there's no way we can convince you?
We made a plan. Now we just need to hold up our end of the bargain.
Then I guess we should stop wasting time and get to work.
This is gonna be good, Evie. You just wait. Ride of your life.
More ways than one. Okay, where do we start?
Start? I got things started as soon as this all went down. I'll show you what I got lined up. To the workshops.
And if I were to call the clearance medical... Odin, I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out.
Close your eyes.
I did already.
A light wind rustles the green tall grass. Your skirt billows gently. Warm sun caresses your back.
Yes.
You begin walking forward. The grass is cool. Your feet parted with each step. Do you see what is in front of you?
As I step through the grass, I naturally come upon a path.
Yes.
The dirt of the soil. The dirt of the path on the soles of my feet. to be. I am striding confidently on my appointed path.
We've never felt as together.
Sarah,
Yes, Odin? One day.
are you going to be all right?
Wherever it takes me is where I am meant to be. I am striding.
I mean, isn't it strange? We've never felt the Earth's pull together. One day.
One day. Oh, Evie. Do you think you could get everyone to medical? I want to make sure they've got the best shot at waking back up once they do go in.
All right. How about this? Let's give folks a little time to regroup. But why don't Clive and I follow you over there right now and get ours done? No time like the present. Lead the way. Quickly as possible. Time is oxygen, people. Great.
I can't believe everybody went along with this.
I'll head downstairs and get started on
Oh my
something.
god.
Okay.
So now we actually have to build
Hey,
this thing.
Andrew.
Clive.
Andrew.
Yeah. Sure.
Hey, are you okay?
Evie! Hey!
Nope, I'm not. Nope, I'm not.
Okay.
Nope, I'm not.
Okay. Look, do you want to talk about...
I can't do it. I can't. This is all crazy.
But you said you...
I know. But what was I supposed to say? You all pressured me.
Andrew.
They really expect us to climb into some jury-rigged thing and ride it through space just because VT might not come pick us up? It's insane. And first we all have to get in cryo just for the privilege. Well, some of us do.
Andrew, I don't know what to say. Bart and Nat need us. They need you.
Well, I'm not doing it. I'm not getting in cryo. I'm gonna be the same one here. Nobody even considered that VT might come pick us up in time if we just wait. Nobody even considered it.
Listen, just... don't talk to anybody else about this for now, okay? And if I were to call the crew into medical, you'd show up, right?
I guess it depends what it is.
Okay. Just... give me a little time.
Just try not to be worried, Andrew.
That's easy for you to say. You don't have lungs. So, what do you think we should do?
Standard operating procedure requires all crew to engage cryogenic hibernation until help arrives.
Yeah, you know people die in cryo, right?
I know. Sometimes.
If, if we don't make it out of this, can you deliver a message to my family?
I will do everything in my power.
Okay. I'll send you something later, all right?
Of course.
We were really grateful to have some friends in the industry and artists that we know contribute some cool pieces of art to the game. For instance, the pinup poster in Bert's locker in the locker room was by Mariel Cartwright, who was the lead animator on Skullgirls and is the art director of the game Indivisible. And then very nearby to that, there's the cover of the Zero Spiel ebook on Sarah's desktop, which is like a multi-layered reference because in Firewatch they were kind enough to put one of the books from Gone Home findable in their game. Ollie Moss, who was Firewatch's art director and did the book covers for the 1 through 10 books for that game, did a really cool kind of visual pun roulette wheel space station book cover for Zero Spiel in Tacoma. Also, some of us did drawings for the game.
Our programmer Hannah did programmer art for Nat. She ghost drew Nat's doodles.
Right.
And
drew those very good Tyrannosauruses. Yep. And in Nat's office, you can find a bunch of Post-it notes on her desk that are just different little doodles of Odin. And we actually assigned Hannah to just draw doodles of Odin over the course of a few months while she was at her desk waiting for builds to finish or whatever. And then one day she just handed us a bunch of sticky notes and was like, here they are. And now they're on Nat's desk. Carla did all of Andrew's drawings.
Yes.
So his sketches from life of flowers and
orchids
statues and stuff.
And stuff like that. And also Nicholas's doofy drawing of Andrew floating in space and yelling at him about homework.
Right. And then I did Bert's drawing of Nat that you find next to Bert's workstation. So yeah, we have this thing where we have different individual people play different characters through their handwriting, and sometimes we have them play different characters through their drawings. Sarah's panic attack also came late in the development of the game. I think it was actually the last AR scene that got written. Botany had originally been a much shorter sequence, and we wanted to expand it to include more characterization between Evie and Clive in the tea garden, and to give Andrew more time with Odin to kind of talk through how he was really feeling after he and Sarah split off.
And commensurately.
Right, that left
that
this
left us with
space
time,
where we knew that we wanted Sarah to meet up with Evie and Clive at the end of the scene, so she couldn't just leave. but she had to go do something, and that led us to say, what's she doing in this time gap? And Sarah has, I think, a lot of she takes on a lot of that responsibility of having suppressed her own outward emotion to be taking care of the crew. She's the doctor, but also she's trying to hold this plan together, and she has people confiding in her that she's kind of holding all these things inside. And we wanted to have this moment where it's just her and Odin, and her being able to actually externalize how hard this is for her, and have Odin help her through that in this way that shows this isn't the first time that this happened. They have this kind of familiar ritual that they go through when Sarah needs help.
Yeah, I think that personal emotional displays like this just feel a lot more engaging to us than, for example, characters screaming at each other because they've lost patience and stuff like that. I think that there's something about seeing what happens to a person when they're by themselves under stress, or I suppose with an AI.
Yeah.
But there's something there that is, it just feels like it rings true. One, two, three.
Vat meat. It even sounded bad like vat meat.
That's because it is bad.
Ugh.
I mean, it's also good.
It's very good.
I mean,
powerfully bad.
Obviously.
The way we were looking at it was, if you're on this long posting, then fresh food would be one of the most desirable things that you could have. And so they have the tomatoes and the squash and the mushrooms, and then also in our fiction, what we speculate is that the vast majority of all meat that would be eaten on Earth is produced in a lab, not in a factory farm, because that's become much more efficient than producing animals. And so also they can use that process on the space station, so they can produce meat protein right on site and turn it into whatever meals they want.
Why not? Why not vat meat?
They also make terrible noises. Whenever you go near these things, they do a lot of squooshing and squanching.
Thanks to Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick, for making our vat meat grosser than necessary.
Oh, it's necessary.
Exactly as gross as necessary.
Precisely. Vat meat.
It's good.
Sure it is.
So Carla hooked us up with a botanist, and we chatted about what plants would be good to grow in a space station.
Yes.
And she was like, well, this is the sort of lighting conditions that would be good for plants, and if you're looking for something highly protein-based, then you should grow some amaranth, and, she suggested all these plants that would be good in, low-level lighting, etc. And then I put a bunch of squash in there and tomatoes and stuff that wasn't at all what she suggested.
Well, and so, the other thing though is that we have the grow lights for them.
Yeah.
They don't need to grow in natural, space station light. And we also totally did take their advice with the just oxygen producers, like the snake plants and everything. Those are legit, real life NASA choices.
Yes. They filtered formaldehyde.
The other thing is that our station didn't have to actually run on just plants,
Yeah. If you know what the rules are, then you can break them all over the place, I suppose. Or decide to throw them out the window.
This is one of 3 places in the game where you can decipher a code for a key code door by observing one of the characters in the AR scene actually inputting it.
We didn't initially have that as a mechanical concept.
That's right. That is something that we had initially only had go find the code somewhere and bring it back. But we saw playtesters watching when the characters would go through the door and looking at the key code, input pad, and being like, "Oh, I was really hoping I could just figure it out from watching them." So we were like, "We can do that."
And we did it.
Yeah. So, that was the point where we were like, we don't want to cut the other ways to get the code that are in the game. We want there to be multiple ways to do it. Because I think there's this feeling of, even if you get every code by just watching the character put it in, but then later you see that code somewhere else and you're like, oh, I could have gotten it this way. That's a cool feeling for the player to know that there was more than one way that they could have solved that problem. They see evidence of it, and kind of the way they got through it was up to how they were playing. Yeah.
This weird little stone is Andrew's shaping stone that he's been working on. Stone shaping is a sort of meditative practice that we made up.
True.
That you're supposed to basically just take some kind of like relatively soft stone in a vaguely spherical chunk and just like rub it with your hands, like so that it slowly is worn down into a smooth shape.
Yeah. Andrew's family kind of brought this meditative practice with them, and then he is carrying it on and lived it and practiced it in his own life.
And that's concretized by the fact that 2 of the stones up in his office belonged to his grandmother, and that she had actually worked on them for her entire life. Also, we have Andrew's cigarettes here because he's a secret smoker, much like Nat, and smoking like normal cigarettes would be an incredibly terrible idea in a space station. Like, you don't want to have an open flame anywhere on a space station where you rely on oxygen to, be there. So we thought smoking was expressive enough that we wanted to have cigarettes anyway. And so we made up a variety of cigarettes that did not actually flame, but
they are self-vaporizing, effectively.
Right.
So I think what we posited was that they had microscopic electric filaments in them, and then when you drew on them with your breath, it would activate those filaments and vaporize part of the cigarette, and that's what you're smoking.
So they heat, but they don't, they never cause it to actually catch fire. So in Tacoma, one of the interesting things we got to do with the scenes is have characters interact with the world, but the world is in a different state than it was when the characters were interacting with it. So the difference between the world that you're looking at and the world that the characters were inhabiting is hopefully visible via their actions, but not in any other way.
Right.
Yeah. Here in the irrigation room, there's a good example of this where if you're watching Andrew when he's talking to Sarah, there's one point where he is walking across the room and it looks like he's holding something, and it happens to be the hose that's on the ground. And you'll see the characters at the beginning walking through the hose, and then later in the scene, once he had hooked up the hose across the room, you'll see the characters step over it. So that's kind of a good example of showing both states.
Yeah, there's some other places where you only see the aftermath, like in medical, the storage room is all messed up and the shelves are knocked down, and that's what happens at the very end of the scene. But yeah, in irrigation here, you actually get to see the before and the after and the during kind of all in one place.
Yeah, the only other one I can think of is the drone, which when it explodes, it gets tilted on its stand, and so everyone's interacting with it in slightly the wrong place.
Right, and Bert is climbing up a ladder that has fallen
been knocked
onto
over
the floor and stuff like
and
that.
Using controls that are touching things that are now covered by what's that stuff called?
Foam.
Yeah.
Good commentary.
Just say foam again like that.
Oh, foam.
So the tea garden at the end of the long hall here in Botany, if you go there, it's one of the few places in the station where it's almost entirely window. Hopefully some people caught it. There's a small and completely serendipitous result, which is when you're actually looking out here and you wait for the other wings to come around, you can see the burst oxygen tanks that are a central plot point. And in fact, you can see those from any place in the game. If you look out the window, they're there from the very first second of the game. But it was just kind of an accident. We built this whole wing, and we were deciding how to align the station in respect to how the wing was lined up. And I did this accidentally and put this right here because I really wanted to look out onto the solar panels of the station. And then I just saw the tanks kind of drift by slowly, so it was pretty cool.
There's a few different specific callbacks to our last game, Gone Home. in Tacoma. We are pretty directly implying that they take place in the same universe because there's a gardening book written by Sam's mom from Gone Home that you can also find here in the Botany Wing. So some of them are pretty direct. But this one that we're near right now...
That's pretty direct also.
It's fairly direct. But it's not like the same object. It's just a mug that says jazz on it.
You think people have jazz mugs in real life?
Well, a lot of people do now. They bought them from Tocatico.com.
Son of a gun.
We made it happen. We ruined people's kitchens.
It's true.
But
we don't have this for merchandise.
No.
Don't get excited about that.
As far as direct Gone Home callbacks go, there's the Janice Greenbrier book, there's the jazz mug, and then there's the Christmas duck that you find in the empty storage bunk in the network technology module
and it
later
lights
in the game.
up.
That's true. And
Unlike
it plays
Jan's
a little
book.
song for you. Yeah.
Or the jazz mug.
True. Nothing else
Honestly.
lights up and plays you a little song.
What a ripoff.
The AR game in Andrew's bunk is called Spitfire Returns, which is implied to be a sequel to Super Spitfire that you found in Gone Home, which is the Super Nintendo version of the kind of vector graphics Spitfire game that is playable in Minerva's Den for BioShock 2. So that's the one thing that actually in a lot of ways carries through the most directly from all three of those titles. The basketball Easter egg, I guess, is something that we took from System Shock 2 as an homage in Gone Home and then carried forward into Tacoma as well.
We didn't put it in Minerva's Den.
Yeah, there's no basketballs.
We did a bad job. Should have made one.
Sorry, everybody.
You're not sorry.
I know.
Okay, Odin. Ready? I'm gonna do it this time.
So a lot of Tacoma's character dynamics are about trust and who trusts who with what in what context, all those sorts of things. I think we see a lot of that in the botany module specifically. We see, Evie telling the crew, here's our plan and it's going to work, and then when she's in private with Clive saying, this plan isn't going to work, what are you thinking? And then I think that you can kind of contrast how both Andrew and Sarah trust and confide in Odin, but Sarah confides in Odin as a personality, and Andrew confides in Odin with his real worries, right, and saying, what I've said is we should just trust the company and do what they say, and then as soon as I'm alone in a room with Odin, I'm saying, how likely is it really that they're going to come pick us up? How sure should I be about this, even though I'm acting totally sure in front of everybody else?
Yeah, and Andrew doesn't quite treat Odin like a person.
Right.
But, like, yeah, he's at least confident in Odin's ability to not spill his information.
Right. He trusts Odin as a source of information.
Right.
And as, this
As an
thing.
analyst,
This thing that he can acknowledge his own uncertainty in front of, in a way that he wouldn't in front of a human.
Right,
in
like
this situation.
That sort of like, your pet doesn't care if you're wearing pants kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's that.
True.
Andrew doesn't wear his pants in front of Odin. The end.
Andrew isn't wearing pants the entire game.
And you didn't know it.
How could you?
Everybody was cool with it.
So the propulsion suits are never actually called out in the lore of the game, but the idea behind them is that each crew member has a couple of them in their bunks, and that they're used to sort of traverse the central hub, which is a microgravity environment, unlike the rest of the station. So they have little air jets placed in the fabric of strategic areas, kind of on the arms, the hips, and the legs. And there's little jets let the user move in kind of a controlled way through this giant space. And it also lets us make like a uniform for the Tacoma station that we can kind of personalize with like a name tag for each crew member. I did a little concept for them. It's just the idea behind them was sort of like a space coverall, something not too glamorous, but it's fun. I got to use ZBrush which is a sort of like a clay sculpting program, and sort of snuck them in everyone's closet.